Hey guys, it's Elizabeth and welcome back to another video. As you can tell by the title, today's video is more of a story time video that's based off a true story that actually just recently happened than a regular Barbie video. As many of you probably noticed, I posted on Thursday instead of Wednesday, and that was because I went on an overnight school field trip. So the overnight trip was actually going to be for a couple colleges, because the class that the field trip was for is basically a college class that prepares us for college. The funny thing is, the class is supposed to be like a family, and it's actually the opposite of that. There was this one girl who really enjoyed making the trip miserable for me. Let's just call her Izzy. On the trip, we were accompanied by 4 adults, a teacher helper, let's call her Mrs. C, the teacher of the class herself, let's just call her Miss O, the principal, let's just call him principal, and then the school counselor, which we can just call school counselor to respect their privacy. Before this trip, I actually had some issues with the girl Izzy before. Before the trip, she would spread lies and mean rumors about me to people that were not true. When she told these people the rumors, she then got these people to turn against me and not want to be my friend. The problem then went out of control and it got to the counselor's office. However, it was a different counselor than the one on the trip. The counselor that it did get to, we had a sit-down talk, and Izzy made it look like it was a misunderstanding, when we both knew perfectly well it wasn't. Long story short, Izzy and I made an agreement that she would leave me alone and not spread any more rumors about me to people. It was nothing like that on the trip, though. It all started when I was talking to my roommate. Let's just call her Kara. Kara and I were starting to make really good friends, and that's when Izzy and her friend came in. Izzy started randomly talking to Kara, even though they had never talked before the trip. Izzy would keep talking to Kara and try and pull her into her and her friend, so then they couldn't talk to me. Eventually, Kara was officially part of Izzy and her friend's group. Not literally, but they acted like it. They just kept talking to Kara, and they wouldn't include me, even when I tried to inject myself in the conversation. So, eventually I just gave up and started talking to other people. I started talking to this one boy, not because I liked him or anything, but just because the boys are involved in less drama than girls. I was actually starting to make friends with this boy, and apparently Izzy saw that, because right after I started talking to him, she goes and literally pulls him into her group. Then, Izzy, her friend, Kara, and that boy are all a group. And then the same thing happens whenever I try and inject myself to the conversation. I get ignored. I get blown off. The same thing happens 2 more times with 2 other guys. They just get pulled into her group and they won't include me. It's obvious that Izzy was talking about me to them, which later comes up and turns out to be true, but I haven't gotten there yet. Anyways, I would keep trying to talk to them and they would just ignore me. And it was so upsetting because I didn't do anything. Izzy would purposely try and make me feel excluded. She even made a group chat with all of them and was saying it perfectly loudly for me to hear. Hey guys, look at the cool new group chat. And they wouldn't even add me. That was when I had enough. I was sick of being treated badly on a trip that was supposed to be fun. So then we get up to our hotel room, which then I thought I could just talk to Kara without Izzy, because Kara was my roommate. But then Kara gets a FaceTime call from Izzy, and then the whole hour that we were supposed to be spending time together, she was FaceTiming Izzy. Izzy knew perfectly well I was her roommate, so she was doing it on purpose. While this was happening, I was texting my mom and telling her how upset I was. Just like me, my mom was really upset about this situation, especially because the counselor and Miss O said they'd look out for me. They knew the fizz situation that happened before the trip. All of a sudden, while I was in the middle of texting my mom, there's a knock on the door, and it's Miss O. She gives me this look, and she's like, Elizabeth, come here. Then I had to get out of bed, even though I already had my covers on, put my shoes on, and I was already half asleep, so then I had to wake myself up. Then I had to walk out of the room, down the hallway in front of everyone, and go to the counselor's room and talk to the counselor with Miss O. The first thing that happens when I get to the counselor at Mrs. O's room, they ask me what happened, so I tell them everything. The first thing that the counselor says after I tell her is, quote unquote, It sounds like you're very possessive of who Izzy talks to just because you don't like her. And that was just like a slap in the face to me. Because that's how Izzy was to me, of whoever I talked to. I don't know why she thought that, but it was very upsetting. It was like the counselor wasn't even listening to me. Then it got even worse. Mrs. O then shows me a text from her phone. The texts were from her and my mom. My mom was asking her what's going on and saying that I'm very upset. Then Mrs. O tried to tell my mom that I was fine. And then my mom said that I'm not fine. And then my mom sends a screenshot of my mom's text to Mrs. O. The screenshot was of me saying I hate this trip so much. Mrs. O and the counselor were both very upset just because I told my mom that I hated the trip. Mrs. O then pointed to that picture of the phone, of the screenshot, and said, "What does that say? Read that to us out loud." I was then forced to read the message out loud. At that point, my face was so pale, my jaw was dropped, and I was crying. My hands were even shaking. But they obviously didn't get the message, so they kept going off at me. They were just saying stuff like, "Oh, we have an upset parent. It seems like you're just overreacting. Your mom's saying that you're being bullied, but it sounds like these girls are just being rude." And I was like, just being rude? This was literally bullying, and they didn't seem to get that. The adults were more upset at the fact that my mom was upset than the fact that I was getting bullied on their trip. They were also more upset about the fact that Izzy and Kara were having a FaceTime call when the principal clearly said no FaceTime calls. So then Mrs. O gets up and says she's going to talk to Izzy. Then I ask what she's going to say, and she won't tell me. So to this day, I have no idea what Mrs. O said. But then Miss O leaves the room and she goes and talks to Izzy. Then I'm left alone with the counselor, and the counselor just keeps ranting at me, so I just sit there. I was so uncomfortable and upset. I felt like I was getting called out and embarrassed for nothing, when it should be Izzy who should got called out, and not me, because I wasn't doing anything wrong, but Izzy was. All the adults had to do was pay attention, and they could have easily realized what Izzy was doing. But no, they didn't. About 15 minutes of ranting, Mrs. O comes in. She interrupts the counselor, and says that she took care of the situation and I'm free to go back to my room. So then I walk back to my room, and then Kara is sitting on the bed on her phone. And when I walk in the room, she gives me this weird look. Izzy obviously told her what happened. Because after that, Kara just wouldn't talk to me at all. And then the rest of the night was just really uncomfortable. Same for the morning. Then let's fast forward to the morning. In the morning, Kara had to take her morning shower and get her dressed and all of that stuff. And I was already dressed because I was up before her. So I took advantage of that time and talked to my mom. My mom was very, very upset the way that the counselor and Miss O handled the situation. And so was I. So then it turns out that last night, my mom also had contacted the principal and they had a phone call. The principal didn't say how, but he said he was going to take care of the situation. Then after Kara and I were both ready, we walked down to breakfast. But of course, once we open our hotel room door, then there is Izzy and her friend ready to walk to breakfast with us. So I'm forced to walk to breakfast with Izzy and her friend, which they make it perfectly clear that they are holding a grudge against me because they all just give uncomfortable looks and then look at me and make me feel so uncomfortable. Then we get down to breakfast. They all set their stuff down at a table of 4, and I have nobody else to sit with, so I just set my stuff down next to Caroline's. Then they sit down, and I go up to get my food. Once I go up to get my food, I get back to the table while they're still there. But then I realize I didn't get any milk for my cereal. So I go back to get milk for my cereal. I come back, and they all literally moved to a table of 3, so I couldn't sit with them. Then, at that point, I didn't know what to do. I was literally on the verge of tears, and I had no one else to sit with. So then I was just like, you know what? I'm not just going to sit here. So I just walk over there and put myself by their table. But not at it, of course, because there was literally no room. They knew what they were doing. Then Mrs. O came up to me,
and she just gave me this solemn, rude-ish look and said, "Why don't you go sit over there with insert name of other student's name?" So then I have to go to this other kid's table, and it's a little awkward at first, but then those people kind of start talking to me. Again, it's really awkward, but some of the people at the table talk to me. Then at one point, someone at the table had to go to the bathroom, and basically the whole table ended up going with them. And then one of the girls asked me if I could go with them, so I did. On the way back from the bathroom, I saw the principal talking to Izzy and her friend. The principal then saw me walking by and leaves Izzy and her friend's table and comes up to me. He then came up to me and he was really friendly and he was just like, "Hey Elizabeth, I just talked to Izzy and her friend. I asked them if it would be okay if we all had to sit down and they think that talk would be necessary." So basically I just said yes, but in my head I was wondering why he would ask their side of the story first. I never even got a chance to tell him my side of the story first, and I don't see why they did. Anyways, the four of us walked outside, out of the hotel, and basically sat down. Then first, he has Izzy talk, and Izzy basically says that the only reason she was avoiding me was because that she thought that at the meeting before the trip, the other counselors said for us to be distant and not talk to each other. That was totally not true, and it was super obvious she was just making up excuses. To this day, I don't know if the principal bought into her excuses or not, but Izzy basically made me look like a fool at that sit-down. The principal was trying to help, and I will give him that he was friendly about it. But he never reprimanded Izzy about what she was doing, and Izzy just denied everything and made excuses, just like she did at all the previous talks. Then after that talk, the principal thought it would be necessary for me and him to go up to Kara and just say that the drama has been cleared because he and I and Izzy and her friend all felt that Caroline was kind of stuck in the middle and we didn't want her to be in that position. However, after we told Caroline that, Caroline totally ghosted me. She went from sitting next to me on the bus to not sitting with me at all. So I sat by myself on the bus for the rest of the trip, and it was really miserable. To make things worse, Mrs. O gave me the cold shoulder. Yes, the teacher gave me the cold shoulder. Now, this teacher is sort of a teacher who treats the students like her friends instead of students, and normally she would be really nice to me, talk to me, really outgoing. Then, after that talk we had that night, she just stopped talking to me, and she would literally ignore me and be rude. To make things worse, Izzy and her friend then tried to go up and be buddy-buddy with the principal and Mrs. O. And yes, Mrs. O still wouldn't talk to me, and it made me feel very uncomfortable. Then on the bus ride back, I had to sit by myself again, and it was super uncomfortable. I was just about to start crying at one point. Once I got back to the school after that long, miserable trip, my mom picked me up, and I was just so happy. But the weird thing was, Miss O, she saw my mom picking me up. She couldn't even look at my mom. She didn't say one word. So that is the story of the terrible, horrible field trip. Even though this field trip really did stink, it was a good learning experience. It taught me that people can be very manipulative, and sometimes adults can take advantage of their power and just be immature. Moral of this story, though, don't let people, yes, not even adults, steal your joy. Don't let them ruin you having a good time. Looking back on the trip, I really did have a bad time, but I might have had an okay time if I didn't let Izzy and the adults get to me. So, moral of the story, don't let people steal your joy. Thank you guys so much for listening to this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!